When a great game takes the world by surprise, whether it's by introducing refreshingly new ideas or by revitalizing and repurposing long-abandoned ones, gamers are always left wanting more. It doesn't take long for the focus to shift towards a potential sequel, followed by years of speculation, anticipation, and hype. Hollow Knight fans are no strangers to this, as Silksong has easily become one of the most anticipated games of the past decade. Everyone is desperately waiting to hear a release date or even just a breadcrumb of new info from the very tight-lipped Team Cherry. So much so that some are even wondering if the game will see an announced release date mere weeks or even days before it comes out. Besides a release date, the biggest question surrounding Silksong is whether it can meet such overwhelming expectations. As we've seen in the past, oftentimes high expectations can ultimately lead to a serious disappointment. Sometimes it even leads to a division of the fanbase where it seems just as many people hate the game when it comes out as much as there are those who love it. But when it's done right and expectations are met or even exceeded, it can lead to some really special games that will not soon be forgotten. As we wait for the release date of Silksong, let's dive deep into who Team Cherry is, look back at the humble beginnings of Hollow Knight and its eventual impacts, and then cover what we know of Silksong so far to determine what it will take for Silksong to meet these overwhelming expectations. This is In Development, a series where I do a deep dive on the best new and upcoming indie games coming soon. If you're into this sort of thing, consider subscribing for more just like this. Before we cover what we know about Silksong, let's take a step back and review how Team Cherry and its small team of indie devs built a genre-defining masterpiece of a game that has become one of the GOATs of gaming, where it is still celebrated to this day for being a masterclass in great boss design, atmospheric world creation, and incredible scale. Hollow Knight was born from an idea explored in a game jam back in 2014 with a little game called Hungry Knight, which is still playable today. While it's nothing quite like what would become Hollow Knight, there was something about it that made the founders of Team Cherry want to explore their ideas further. You might know that the original Hollow Knight had a Kickstarter campaign, but what you might not know is that the game had a fairly quiet stint on the crowdfunding platform, with a little over 2,000 backers pledging a total funding of just under 60,000 Australian dollars. The game flew under the radar compared to many games which have seen hundreds of thousands or even millions raised on the platform. And yet, Team Cherry, a tiny indie team working on their first project, were thrilled to reach their funding goal, not knowing their little indie game would go on to see millions of copies sold while receiving praise and accolades by critics and gamers everywhere, and creating an excitable fanbase desperate for more in the process. So who is Team Cherry? Well, the current core team working on Silksong is made up of the co-founders Ari Gibson and William Pellin, who worked together to create the original game jam that inspired Hollow Knight. And they're working together with Jack Fine, forming the core trio working together on the art design, game design, and coding. Of course, they have some support in other aspects of the game. Christopher Larkin, who orchestrated Hollow Knight's award-winning music and sounds, is back to work on the score for Silksong. And there's also Matthew Griffin, who is leading the marketing and publishing efforts for the project. He's given us our latest update on Silksong, acknowledging that they at one point intended on releasing it in the first half of 2023, but is still well into development so they can make the game as good as they possibly can. Of course, there are also testers and some supporting roles like voices contributing to the project, but more or less, this is the team behind one of the most anticipated video games of the past decade, besides maybe Tears of the Kingdom until it came out. But going back to the Hollow Knight Kickstarter for a minute, the campaign even missed most of its stretch goals. Many of these stretch goals might even be recognizable to you, as they would still end up seeing the light of day as DLC additions, all due to the incredible success the game had. The game would go on to take shape into what it is today. Fast-paced and rhythmically flowing boss fights, bombastic music setting the stage for an epic boss fight, adorable grubs grateful for your help, less than adorable grubs giving you a panic attack, a world map that just keeps getting larger and larger, and the area that everyone hates. Why is it always spiders? Why? To this day, more than 6 years since the initial release, Hollow Knight is still adored by gamers everywhere. Those who are on their umpteenth playthrough, those who speedrun it, and those who are experiencing it for the very first time today. The impacts of Hollow Knight are incredible, and we still see the effects it has on the indie game dev community, where many new devs are now developing their own Metroidvanias, largely inspired by Team Cherry's flagship title. It's no wonder why Silksong has been so heavily anticipated since its first official reveal back in February 2019. Actually, it goes back even further when Hornet's Adventure was originally going to be DLC. So how do you follow up a game like Hollow Knight? If you change up too much of the formula, you risk creating something worse for a fanbase that is already on edge waiting for release. But if you stick too close to the script, then it becomes difficult for the sequel to emerge from the shadows of its predecessor, and will lead to it not feeling as impactful or groundbreaking as the original. So let's talk about how Team Cherry is working on striking a balance between the two to make another masterpiece. We'll be touching on all these points shown on screen here, and there's a lot to cover, so let's get right into it. Starting with game size, Silksong already seems like an even grander game. As of a blog update way back in December of 2019, it was confirmed that there was already 165 new enemies designed compared to Hollow Knight's roughly 140-something different enemies. And surely a few more have been added over these past few years. Can Silksong's base game content rival that of the complete version of Hollow Knight? I think it just might be able to do so. While Hollow Knight had a theme of descent as we went deeper and deeper under the old kingdom of Hallownest to uncover its secrets, Hornet's journey will be themed around ascent, climbing higher and higher of the new kingdom Farloom to reach the citadel at the top. We know from the December 2020 Edge magazine interview that there's some surprises in store for us once we get to the citadel, making it sound like the citadel isn't necessarily the end of the adventure and Hornet may set her sights on a new goal once there. From what we've seen so far of the known biomes to date, the world appears to be even more detailed, bright, and varied compared to the dark depths of Hallownest. The Moss Grotto is the game's starting area as Hornet breaks free from her cage and finds herself in a lush and damp forest of, well, moss. A little further on you will find yourself in the Deep Docks as shown in the Nintendo Treehouse event during 2019, which is an industrial area within a lake of lava. The Bone Forest is yet another area filled with lava and interestingly enough was an area cut from Hollow Knight during the late stages of development. And there's Greymoor, a large dilapidated area infested with crawlbugs and dust roaches. It's been noted as being one of the biggest areas Team Cherry has worked on to date, implying that there just might be even larger areas still to be found in Silksong. Could Greymoor be Silksong's version of Deepness? We'll also have a new hub area known as Bone Bottom. Moving on to gameplay, Hornet being more acrobatic than the Knight will also give both platforming and the combat a whole new feel, creating a more distinctly fluid and flowy type of movement compared to the stiffer movement the Knight had. Silk replaces the soul system, and the addition of both tools and crests replace the charm system. These are similar ideas but different enough to mix up the gameplay, with tools being a secondary attack option that can, say, give you some attack range or allow you to set up a trap, and there's likely to be passive buffs based on the distinctly different symbols and groupings found in this footage from one of the trailers. We see a number of tools in the footage, such as the straight pin, which is thrown like a dart out in front of Hornet, and tools can be modified even further. The straight pin, for example, can eventually evolve into a new version of the tool consisting of a trio of projectiles. In the Edge magazine interview, it's noted that Hornet's resourcefulness means she could even develop these tools after some enemy encounters, adding her own personal touch to her new weapon. Crests are a set of customizable loadouts containing these tools, giving you a couple of options to play around with and make your own. Healing will see an overhaul as well, as Hornet uses up a full spool of silk to heal 3 HP instead of just 1. It is not only much faster compared to the Knight's use of soul for healing, but it can also be performed mid-air too. This makes it easier to stay in the action rather than trying to play passively while you look for obvious opportunities to heal. Because of this, it also leads to more dynamic boss fights. Speaking of bosses, it's safe to assume Team Cherry is aiming to increase the number of boss encounters in Silksong based on how they've already surpassed Hollow Knight's number of enemy types years ago. We've seen a lot of these bosses already in brief glimpses, but there are a few that we know a little bit more about. First, we have Lace, who was featured in the E3 demo and plays a mysterious rival character likely to be encountered several times and will have evolving attacks throughout the game, much like Hornet once did for the Knight. Moss Mother shows up as a simple fight for Silksong's first boss to be encountered. There's a flamboyant butterfly Trobio seeking fame and adoration, at this point not clear if he'll be a friend or a foe. And Steel Assassin Sharp, a Kickstarter backer designed enemy who will finally make an appearance in Silksong. And there's way more than that we've already seen from really brief appearances in trailers. Defeat in Silksong works in a similar manner. Instead of leaving your shade, you will leave a cocoon full of silk. This adds a new flavor to the gameplay as it can be broken into to recharge your silk supply in the middle of a boss fight to help give you an edge. With Hornet also being a touch more vocal than the Knight, she will respond to the character she interacts with, which gives us a more clear view into what the protagonist is thinking and feeling. On top of that, Hornet will be helping the citizens of the world in various activities including hunting rare beasts, unearthing ancient mysteries, and searching for lost treasures. These will feature their own interesting twists and will be tracked in a full-blown quest log. This is in addition to the surprise encounters you could stumble upon, such as how it was when we met Quarrel, Cloth, and Zote in Hollow Knight. Friendly characters we've been introduced to so far include Chakra, who will act as our new map maker, leaving a trail of rings to help us find her location. She's noted as being part of a clan of fierce warriors too, so we're left to wonder if we'll ever get to see her or her clan in action via friendly duel or as eventual adversaries. We have Sherma on a spiritual journey of his own. His lack of combat skills implies we will find him in some danger and in need of saving. Garmin and Zaza are on a quest to find a new home. We can see them providing some combat support in two different areas from the trailers. And there's several others we've seen but don't know too much about yet. Besides that, we have some new collectible currencies. Shell shards and rosary beads are used to purchase and replenish your tools, and resting at benches now repair your tools but at a slight cost. Mapping is going to work essentially the same way via a combination of Chakra's maps and our own exploration. And mask shards return in the same manner too, collecting 4 to increase your max HP by 1. As for the difficulty, Team Cherry wants Silksong to have a similar level of challenge compared to Hollow Knight to create a nice entry point for those who may have skipped out on Hollow Knight, but they also hope that the new mechanics introduced will still provide a decent challenge to those who mastered Hollow Knight. Just like Hollow Knight's Steel Soul mode, Silksong will feature its own additional challenging mode currently known as Silk Soul mode. What this new challenge mode is specifically is still a bit of a secret at the moment, but the devs promise they will take it a step further beyond what Steel Soul was, and will hopefully lead to something that lasts a bit longer. They're quoted saying, "Good luck." True to its name, the game showcases a more musical theme with many of the bugs sporting musical instruments and melodic tools. Could we be seeing a more diverse soundtrack with a higher variety of instruments as well? We have 2 tracks already out to give us some early impressions. All of these things add up to a very promising sounding game. But with all this said, there's still another factor that is having an impact on the development of Silksong, and that is the pressure factor. The long years of waiting for Silksong has only built up the hype and anticipation even further, to the point where it seems like fans are expecting nothing but a flawless GOAT of a game. And Team Cherry is highly aware of it. The entire weight of this pressure rests on the shoulders of just 5 or so people. I can't even imagine what it feels like. This is the kind of pressure that could break someone, and we've seen it before. It's part of what made Phil Fish abruptly axe the sequel to Fez, and leave the gaming industry altogether. It's what may have led to an unfinished project getting pushed out to release, knowing they would need to spend more than half a decade more just to deliver on some of the promises made. It's what could make a game get stuck in development hell and possibly never seeing the light of day. And yet, by all indications, Team Cherry has continued to persevere. Although details of Silksong remains pretty sparse, the game has continued to show signs of life over the years, clearly showing the game is being carefully crafted and finely tuned as it tries to meet the wild hype and expectations following it. As for when Silksong will release, Team Cherry has simply stated that the game will release when it is ready and when it matches the quality and scale of Hollow Knight. When that will be at this point is still anyone's guess, but by all indications we are getting very close. And when it does release, it's going to be a massive game that I believe will meet our expectations, despite how crazy they may seem. Now I want to hear what you think. Do you expect Silksong to be worth the wait, or will it fall short of fans' expectations? Do you think we'll see a release in 2023? Do you actually like Deep Nest? Let me know below. Thanks for watching through the video. If you enjoyed this, consider liking and subscribing to see more videos from me just like this one. I cover all kinds of indie games, big and small, on the channel, so you may even find some hidden gems that you didn't know about on here. And if you want to support me even further, consider sharing the video with a friend who might enjoy this. It really helps a small channel like mine out a lot. Thanks in advance if you do. I'm Colonel Dupes, and I'll see ya in the next one.